My name is Henry Reich. I was born in Lodz, Poland, June 23, 1925. I had one sister. My father was a newspaper publisher and a journalist. Lodz was a city of about 500,000 people. 1/3 was Polish, 1/3 was Jewish, and 1/3 was German. We lived in a comfortable apartment. My father was not Orthodox, but Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, whatever holidays we had, we celebrated. I was going to a public school. Schools were segregated. That's even though it was public schools, but the school I went to was, the children were all Jewish. I'm also went to KHDS. KHDS is a rabbi who was teaching the children how to daven and be religious, especially when there were Christian holidays. Mm-hmm. Jews would practically not go out in the street because the Christians were getting drunk and beating up Jews. This was a tradition. The Germans that lived in my city, in Lodz, as soon as the Germans on September the 1st crossed the border to go into Poland, these people already had uniforms and guns and everything, and they occupied on the 2nd of September, they occupied the city. My father was a journalist and a newspaper publisher. The Germans, when they came in, they were looking for intellectuals, lawyers, doctors, or whatever. They didn't. This is what they did. Arrest these people. My father took my mother and me and my sister, and we went to Warsaw. In a short time, every Jew had to wear a yellow star. And the Germans, when they saw Jews, they would beat them up. Kids meet. We play ball, or we just congregate, but there was curfews. After 5 o'clock, nobody could go out to the street. I got a job. I worked in a bakery. They took a part of the city, a large part of the city. They walled it in. Lucky for us, we were in this part, so we stayed in the apartment. And whoever didn't, had to move out to the ghetto, had problems. Either they moved in with their relatives, and that's about the only thing they could do. Shortage of food, scared, and just horrible. The uprising doesn't start overnight. There was, like I said, about close to 500,000 Jews. We were down to 60,000 Jews in the ghetto. In that small ghetto, there was a group of young people, and there were some people who were in the military. They started having meetings, and they decided to organize and get some weapons and fight back. And on the roof, we had a group of men with some handguns, rifles, and one machine gun. The first trucks that came in to kill the Jews were Ukrainians. They were surprisingly greeted by shooting at them, killing them. So they backed out. So for a couple of days it was quiet, and the Germans decided to bring in tanks, flamethrowers, and they started burning up building by building. And the Jewish fighters were still fighting back and killing some nice group of Germans. But how much can you do with a handgun against a tank? The whole ghetto was set on fire. And we surrendered, and the Germans said, we're going to treat you as prisoners of war. They put us on a train, and we went to Majdanek. That was my first concentration camp. And when we got off the train, like I said, I still was with my father, mother, and sister. They broke us up. They took the women separate and the men separate. That was the last time I saw my mother. Being there is indescribable, the horrors that were going on. Guards there robbed the people of whoever, the ring on their finger or watch or whatever. There were mountains of dead bodies laying there. So it's just indescribable, you know. When we arrived, he lined us up and he said, are there any doctors here? 2 doctors stepped out. Are there any plumbers there? 2 guys stepped out, and so on. He lined up 15 people, professionals. He took a machine gun, and he said, we don't need professional people here. Everybody was killed. Then you learned one thing in the camps. You don't volunteer for nothing. Next, I went to another camp. The camp was called Radom. It's a large city in Poland. And there was a munitions factory there. They were making guns. We were constantly being transferred because the Russians were coming closer in Poland. They were coming from the east, and we were being moved to the west. From Radom, I went to Auschwitz. I came with my father, and this was an experience that's unbelievable. They put the people, the women to the right, and the men to the left. Auschwitz, you didn't do nothing there. You just waited to get exterminated. So you always looked at that chimney there. The smoke was going the whole day. By some kind of a miracle, they got a call that they need 200 people, 200 men in a quarry in Germany. I went to Weihingen. I'm alive because I believe in miracles. The things that happen to me in certain situations, so that make me believe in God. And from Weihingen, they sent me to a Hessenthal, a camp that was near Stuttgart. Now over there, the Germans went right and left, right, left. They broke me up with my father. So there were two brothers. They broke up the 2 brothers. So I said to one of the brothers, you know what? You go on my name to your brother, and I'll go with your name to my father. You understand? We switched. I became Lieberman. The guy who went to his brother was Reich. Unfortunately, he died in a salt mine. Henry Reich. After the war, I found out. The Americans' planes were watching what's going on in the camp. They saw they're putting us on a train. So they bombed the locomotive. So we started a walk from this camp to Dachau. That used to be called the death marches. Who couldn't keep up, the old story. Who was weak and they shot them in the ditch. And we came to Dachau. Dachau was the largest concentration camp and the oldest in Germany. The Germans were supposed to kill everybody who was left in the camp, but they didn't make it. A day before the Americans came in, there was a duel, artillery duel, and accidentally between the Americans on one side of the camp, the Germans on the other side. But anyhow, the Americans stopped, bombed them out. The next day, it got quiet, and all of a sudden, I see a Jeep with 4 American soldiers. Oh, I never forget that. And we didn't know, it was such a shocking moment to see Americans, And the 4 soldiers stepped up and they started thinking in English, liberated, liberated. So we knew that we were liberated. But the first moment to see just this Jeep, every time I talk about it, I cry. These people, what they went through, they didn't know how to be cheerful. They were just more interested to get some food. I think Eisenhower came into the camp, and when he looked at these mountains of the dead bodies, he cried like a baby, and he rounded up the Germans from the vicinity, from the little towns and villages. They should come in and clean up the place, to bury the people. I think I'm a very lucky guy through my life. I love Israel. I hope to survive. The love for Israel and the need for Israel will keep us alive. I appreciate what you people are doing here, because this is the only way that this film will live and should be seen for a long time, that people should see what happened to our people and from the witnesses, because the Holocaust survivors, unfortunately, are disappearing. They're dying away. And you are the second generation or the third generation one. You can keep the memory alive. To talk about it, show it in films, and these things.